So we're here on board the Tradewin 35 Sagarmatha, which belongs to skipper Guy Waits. Guy, just talk me through why you decided to choose this boat for the race.
It was the right boat at the right time at the right price. If I had a pot full of money, which I don't have, and certainly didn't when I bought the boat, then I would have probably chosen a Rustler, because that seems to be the weapon of choice for most of the competitors. But the Tradewin came along, and it's quite a unique one. It was originally John Rock, the designer's boat, originally called Betty, and then Betty was sold to an English couple who sailed it all the way to Australia and New Zealand under the name Silver Heels, and they sold it to Don McIntyre, and he entered, or planned to enter, his own race with the boat as Silver Heels, and ultimately sold it to Kevin Fairbrother, who was the entrant in the 2018 edition, and he named it Sagarmatha because that's the name for Mount Everest in Nepalese. And he's climbed Mount Everest 3 times. He's actually done it 4 times now. I was in touch with him just the other day, so incredible achievement.
And just talk me through the cockpit here. So you've got a kind of, just looking at your little hatch here, and your kind of small kind of spray dodger. Obviously, I guess it's small to reduce windage.
Absolutely, yeah. These things are a target, particularly in the Southern Ocean, and it folds down virtually flat, and hopefully no damage will come to it. And then I've got a watertight hatch, which is a must-have for me, really. The idea of washboards and a sliding hatch, I can't face that for the Southern Ocean.
Can you control the boat from inside?
No, not at all. No. You have to be on deck. All the lines come aft to the cockpit, and it's a relatively small cockpit, nice and deep and safe. I'm never more than 1 step and 1 arm's length away from just about every control line on the boat, including the wind vane, the hydro vane.
Was that deliberate? Because really on heavy weather, you don't really want to be on deck reefing at the mast, for example.
I just think you get a much better feel for the reefing process from back in the cockpit. I mean, it means extra lines, and that adds extra weight, etc. But and I've also removed the stack pack, which you can't see at the moment because of the makeshift mainsail cover we've got on, because that just hides all the lines and the reefing points, and you can do a lot of damage very quickly with a winch. So I like being back here and getting more of a sort of helicopter view of what's going on rather than being right up close to it. And certainly some benefits in terms of safety and being in the cockpit to do everything, yes.
And you've got wheel steering. Is that something you prefer, or do you usually prefer tiller steering?
It depends on the boat. Now, given that the type of rudder is hanging on the aft edge of the keel, they're all long keel boats. If I had a tiller on this rudder head here, the tiller would be out here somewhere in between the companionway hatch, and it would be totally unpractical. So I've kept the wheel. I do very little steering. The hydrovane does most of the work, and the great thing about the hydrovane is it's an auxiliary system, so it's totally independent of the main ship's rudder. So I can just hold the rudder pretty much in the neutral position and let the hydrovane do all the work.
And the controls for the hydrovane come to...
They're right here.
Right.
They're right here, yeah. The cockpit is a mess at the moment because we're right in the middle of final preparation, so there's stuff hanging out of everywhere.
It's fine.
But, that's all part of the GGR.
It is indeed. So what for you, do you think, what edge do you have on the other competitors in this race?
I don't really think of it as an edge in terms of a racing perspective. I think my pluses are my solo experience. I've crossed the Atlantic single-handed 5 times, and thanks to the Clipper race, I've sailed pretty much 3/4 of the course. The only part I haven't sailed is from Australia to Cape Horn, which is obviously a pretty big leg. But I'm not unduly worried about any of that. I think having so much time on my own on board a boat of various sizes across the Atlantic and back stands me in good stead for a single-handed circumnavigation.
Yeah. And are you looking to kind of win, or are you looking to get round, or?
Well, I've got to tell you that when you make as much effort and commitment, both physical, mental, and money commitment to an event like this, the only thing you're really interested in is getting round in one piece. That's the objective. How well we do will become evident as the race progresses. We've got the media drop points of Lanzarote, Cape Town, Hobart, and Punta del Este, Uruguay. before we get back to the finish. So we'll get a pretty good idea as we're going around where we are and who's ahead and who's behind, which will help for the racing aspect. But for the most part, it's about getting around in one piece.
Talk me through the modifications you've made on the boat.
Okay, well, the biggest modification, really, biggest physical change was cutting the hatch out with a jigsaw, which is a bit of a nervous moment, and fiberglassing in a watertight deck hatch. It's a modification I made to a Corribee that I sailed single-handed across the Atlantic and back. I was capsized in that boat, and I had less than half a bucket of water inside the boat as a result that came in through the air vents. So that's the big modification. And then a lot of the further modifications are to do with rule compliance. So the cockpit lockers need to be watertight. So underneath the cockpit lockers, we've got a separate watertight lid. Every cockpit locker and the lazarette is a separate watertight area from all the others. And each one has its own bilge pump. So I can pump water out of those. I've got a total of 15 watertight areas throughout the whole boat. Okay, there's 5 up in the bow because we put a watertight bulkhead in. That gives us the added benefit within the GGR rules that we can actually strip all the furniture out and the headlinings, etc., from the forepeak. That helps to make the front of the boat a lot lighter, which is one of the big modifications I became aware of sailing the boat from Panama back to the UK, which was my qualifying voyage. Did it single-handed, and the boat was very heavy in the bow. You could tell by the motion she had in the sea, and that's really my big driver for stripping the front of the boat out. And then we've got 3 watertight areas back here with the 2 cockpit lockers and the lazarette, and then the remaining 7, I think it is, are actually within the main saloon itself, basically turning typical stowage areas like the stowage area under your bunk or in the seat backs in the main saloon, sealing them up and putting a watertight door on. A very simple plastic one, but a watertight door. So hopefully I will never need the life raft.
So that's your idea, is that you're in your head, your tactic is to remain with your boat and not.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anyone who's crossed an ocean and has looked at a life raft and thinks that it's really going to save their life. I mean, it is a piece of life-saving equipment. It's an important one to have, but I have every intention of staying with my boat. Yeah.
Okay, can we walk up and see the bow?
Yes, we can. We've got a lot of activity up there, but you're welcome to come up.
Yeah.
Just move some stuff out of the way. I've got a lot of helpers today.
You need them.
Yeah,
everyone needs to help us.
So we've got 3 solar panels. The rules say that we have to have 160 watts of solar charging on the boat. But if you have an alternative source of charging, and I'm not referring to the engine, okay, I'm talking about either a hydro generator that trails in the water or a wind turbine. I've got a wind turbine, and that means I don't have to have all 160 watts of solar on the deck. I've got about 90 here in 3 panels, and then I've got another panel down below, which is kept as basically an emergency spare as a backup. And that gives me a total capacity of almost 200 watts of solar charging. The wind turbine is fantastic. Once you get into the Southern Ocean, where there isn't the sunlight that we get where we are at the moment in the Southern Lawn, the wind turbine will be a huge boost. And the big drain on the batteries is really the HF radio, more than anything, and that's predominantly our source of weather routing, or well, not weather routing, but weather gathering information. And so it's important to have good, strong batteries, and so the wind turbine does that for me. Had to put new deck organisers down. The old deck organisers, they were too large and there weren't enough of them. So we've had to rather hurriedly, since the new mast has gone on, put down these new deck organisers to get all the extra lines aft that I wanted. The old mast had a couple of winches winch pads on the mast, and most of the halyards were terminated at the mast rather than coming back to the cockpit. So I've instantly increased the number that I need to come back, put extra clutches down and more sheaves on the deck.
So your plan really is to stay in the cockpit as much as possible?
As much as possible, yeah. You have to go up onto the foredeck. And I was a bowman for years, so I'm well used to the fact. But for, whether it's setting a storm sail or setting a downwind asymmetric or a symmetric sail, which I have both on the boat. And although I have a furling gear, I only have the one furling gear. The stay sail is hanked on. and the outer forestay, which is at the end of the bowsprit, that's a hanked-on bare stay as well, all with the purpose of giving me options for sail choice and also to keep the front of the boat as light as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say that because looking at Puffin, which is the other Traden 35, she's got 3 furlers.
That's right. Now, that was the setup that Sagamata had when I first bought her, and it made the front of the boat very heavy, and I think it puts a lot of unnecessary strain on the masthead as well. And, you know, knockdowns are a given in the GGR. They're not a possibility. They will happen, and there will be numerous of them. And you get a bad one, it could be more than a knockdown, could even be a rollover, and you need to do everything you can to keep the mast up. So reducing that weight aloft and that strain on the mast is a big part of that.
Yeah.
We've gone for a new Zed Spars Mast with twin spreaders. That brings the first set of spreaders, the lower ones, further down the mast section by 2.1 meters. That significantly reduces the free column between the deck and the first set of spreaders and makes the boat a lot stiffer. And we've got changed from U-bolts through the side deck for the cap shrouds to stainless steel chain plates through bolted to the main bulkhead. So the mast integrity is a great deal stronger than it was before.
And it's all about bringing that weight right down.
It's all about reducing the opportunity for the mast to move out of column. That's when the problems start. And we had a choice really of 2 different section sizes. We went for the Z602, which is a slightly larger one, and that gives us 40% greater stiffness in the section, and that will contribute to keeping the mast up where it should be. The requirement for a nice mainsail cover is pretty low on my budget list of equipment. So we've just wrapped it up in this polytarp that the sails actually came in from Peter Sanders of Sanders Sails. He's made new sails for the whole boat. In fact, the only sail that I'm taking from its previous configuration is the trysail, because it was brand new and literally never used. There was no point changing it. We've got brand new mainsail. We're taking 9 sails. We're allowed, as a single mast boat, you're allowed to take 10. If you're a ketch, like Michael Goog on Nuri, he's ketch rigged, he's allowed 1 extra sail. I don't think there's any point in carrying a mizzen sail around the world. I don't think it increases your chances of doing well in the race. I'd rather have the single mast to worry about. And I've got 9 sails, and 8 of them are brand new, thanks to Peter Sanders. They're absolutely fantastic sails. He did a lot of work with us to make sure we got what we wanted. And we've got the Genoa down on the deck at the moment. You can see there's an awful lot of names written all over it. These are the people who've contributed to the GoFundMe, which is all part and parcel of what's allowed this to happen. And without the support of a great many people and quite a few sponsors now as well, I just simply wouldn't be here. So thanks to all of them.
Right. Can we look down below?
Absolutely, you
Lovely.
can. Yeah.
Are you thinking about these air vents there? You mentioned the only time that you had water down below.
Yeah.
Are you going to be covering these up in any way?
There were 2, look, and you see I've blanked off one already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the one that I've kept is because you absolutely must have ventilation inside the boat. It doesn't help you to prevent mold growth in any way if you go sealing the boat up. In fact, it becomes a horrible breeding ground for it. Istvan Kopar, for instance, had terrible problems with fungus underneath his nails and things. It can really play havoc with your health. So it's important to have the circulation, and also carbon monoxide is a serious issue. If you seal a boat up and go to sleep, you might not wake up. It's that serious. And if people have got alternative sources of cooking, for instance, the meth stoves, that increases dramatically as well. So it's important to have ventilation in the boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So Katy, you now get inaugurated into the Hall of Fame of how the hell do you get into this boat?
I'm just about wondering that. Head first?
Well, hopefully I'll never go head first.
No, hopefully
that would
not.
be a pretty desperate moment.
Yeah. So how do you get in here?
Right. Well, look, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you.
Okay, thank you.
So you may know Jane Toyne of Maverick Zone
I do.
Solutions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, she also works for.
Yeah, she does a lot of.
For Future PLC in our marine team.
That's right, a lot of media. And Jane of Maverick Zone Solutions she's made the spray hood, the pram hood as I call it. She's made these halyard bags for me, the navigation seat, the bunk seats, the lee cloths, the restraining cloths over the top. Done an absolutely fantastic job. So she got her name on the side of the boat. Simple as that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So the easiest thing is to sit down on the doorstep, okay, and then you stand onto the engine compartment, the engine box, and I turn around so you're less likely to bang your head, and then you disappear inside.
Hold on.
Yep. That's it. Sit down.
Great
stuff. Yeah. Now you're on the engine compartment.
There we go.
All right. And then step down. You're in. Well done.
Oh.
You're lucky you're tall, Katy.
I know.
Otherwise,
I was say, for short, you're going to have
it is not
problems.
easy for someone who's vertically challenged.
Okay.
It's quite dark in here, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's pretty. Yeah. It is. I mean, it's compared to other boats, it's quite beamy, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. We've got just over 3 meters of beam, and we've got a lot of stowage built in to the sides as well of the main saloon on both sides. Basically, I've got all my, so just to talk about food for a moment, because people are interested sometimes in what we eat and what we take. I've gone 50-50 between freeze-dried and canned food. Okay. So, all the canned food is down underneath the bunks. Okay. And the bunks, which I would show you were it not for all the things I've got out at the moment, but basically like I've got here, these watertight hatch covers. Okay. Like this. All right. That's porridge, I can tell you. Okay. There's another one here, and there's another 2 over on the port side. The ones on the port side have got the muesli in. Okay, those are my 2 choices of breakfast that I like. It's usually muesli when it's warm and porridge when it's cold. So I've got 50-50 in muesli and porridge. All the cans are underneath the bunks. They've got similar but larger plastic watertight hatches built into them, and all the cans are down there. They're bagged up into week-long supplies. So every bag I take out, I know is a week's worth of food. And I've pretty much divided the food up into, or the canned food into pasta-based meals, rice-based meals, or potato and vegetable-based meals. Okay. So it's all kind of like a meal plan all laid out. And there's a variety in every bag. So there's no repetition across each week. Only week to week do you get the repetition. So there's a bit of variety there too, because I think a lack of variety can be death on board a boat. All my freeze-dried. Okay, I've got 1,000 kcal meals, okay, and those are in weekly packs. And then I've got 800 kcal meals, which are the more normal size. There's a few other bits and pieces in there, and that's all full of 800 kcals in there. Fortunately, the boat is very dry as a result of the refit, but inside those polytarp bags, those Hessian sort of sacks, is actually a very thick, recyclable and reusable plastic bag. So they're effectively watertight bags as well. So if there is a leak, there's no problem. And then all the other heavy equipment is as low down and as near to the centre of the boat as I can possibly get it.
And I'm guessing you've done that to compensate for the fact that she is quite beamy.
It's not really, it's not really, I can't do anything about the design of the boat. So I think it's just the best use of the stowage that I have. I've tried to make the boat as light as I possibly can. Within the rules. That's obviously why I went for the watertight door forward there. Look, you can see it's just a sail locker at the moment, and that's how it will stay, just to keep the front of the boat as light as possible. And then I've used the hanging locker on the starboard side here behind this louver door. That's what I call my safety cupboard. That's where all the safety kit is that doesn't have to be out somewhere. It's all buried away there. So that's my go-to place for safety kit.
And your life raft is strapped to the back.
The life raft has to be outside the boat for the green card. So it's on the lazarette deck. It's really the only place for it on this boat. I don't like having life rafts up on top of the coach roof. I think they're a target. And it's not only strapped down with the standard Viking life raft straps. It's also got some extra lashings on it, which I would have to cut free with a knife. So there's hopefully no opportunity for it to come adrift and disappear by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I've also got in the heads compartment, I can show you that in a moment, and I'll just make some space for you. Unfortunately, it's very dark in there, but there's no heads, basically. It's a bucket.
Okay, so, right.
Yeah. And there's a pile of other stuff in there at the moment whilst I'm still working on the boat. And then we'll have a big clear out just before the race starts on Sunday. Saturday will be the big clear out day where we get rid of everything. We've got mandatory in the race rules are not just lee cloths. You can see this one up here on the port bunk. But we've also got, we need to have bunk restraining belts as well, so that in the event of a knockdown or a rollover, you can't be thrown out of your bunk. And what we've done, Jane Toyne and I have come up with this idea where we just get to this one as well, where not only do we actually have a bunk belts, but they're actually sewn to what is effectively a lee cloth over the top of you. Okay, so you can actually, whatever's on the bunk, whether it's bags of clothing, as will be in the race, or whether it's me asleep, I can strap myself in bad weather and rest, knowing that I'm not going to wake up with a nasty surprise. At least not being thrown out of my bunk anyway. So, yeah.
And have you got the same setup on the other bunk?
It's exactly the same here as well. Yeah, the lee cloth's here underneath all the tools and spares, and this other one is lashed up here, out of the way. And on the main bulkhead, we've got some spare wind vane, some for the hydrovane. This is a special one that I made. It's a cut down version of the standard one for storm conditions, and Jane made a cover and a spare for it as well.
And what benefit do you think that will give you? Right.
Well, in the transatlantic qualifier back from Panama, I was knocked down and the old mast was creased. Okay, which is part of the reason why we needed a new one. And my observations of the hydrovane vane flipping and flopping in the wind in very strong, sort of up to 70 knots, it was quite a violent motion, and I was concerned about how much of that it could take. Now, you're a long time in the Southern Ocean, and it won't be a question of whether you get a storm, but how many. It's a bit like the knockdown situation. The two usually go hand in hand. So what we've done is I've taken the original standard vane, which is a lot taller than that, and had it cut down. So we have a small one, and hopefully then the motion will be less violent. There'll still be more wind than enough to actually control the boat, but it'll hopefully be more resilient, and it means I can use the standard vane for more appropriate conditions.
And how much smaller is it?
It's about 40% smaller than the standard vane. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it's quite a significant change, but the standard vane works fine in 10 knots of breeze. So you don't need that sail area when you've got 50, 60 and 70 knots of wind. So that's what that's for.
Yeah. Brilliant. And then you've obviously got your galley area.
Yes, the galley, which I'm sure once upon a long ago it had a real stove in there. Probably a space for an oven, a grill, and a 4-burner stove. I've now just got I've got a jet boil, which I use for just for drinks and for heating water for freeze dried. All the mini transat sailors are familiar with these things. And then I've just got a very simple gimbaling stove. Getting those out of the way. It's a single burner camp stove. Okay. And I do all my cooking in a pressure cooker, not for the benefits of pressure cooking, because for the most part, all I'm doing is reheating food rather than cooking it. But I like the idea of a pan that's got a lid that locks on, so that when it does come off the stove and throw itself around the cabin, it doesn't decorate the place with the contents of the pan.
And I see the hatches here. These are all new. And
yes, yeah, they're all new Gebo hatches from the Netherlands, and it was a better option for me to actually replace the port lights than get the old ones refitted, unfortunately. So I did look into it, but it was better to have new. So I've got 4 new port lights. Yeah. And
then obviously your nav table.
The nav table, again, covered in spare parts at the moment. But just to give you some idea, the chart plotter will not be here during the race. But what we've got is in this box here, with the safety plan on of where the safety equipment is. Basically, it's a waterproof box for the HF radio. So I literally have to undo the wing nuts, take the acrylic cover off, and plug the plug in for the handset so I can speak to people. We do have an Ais transponder on the boat. That's new for this year, but we don't have access to any information in it. It's just for the benefit of other ships seeing us. This is the AIS alarm by Sealer Marine. That is just an alarm bell to tell you that there's AIS in the area, and you can adjust the sensitivity of it as well if it's unnecessarily alarming. We've also got the Echomax radar detector, which does a very similar thing that enhances our target size on the radar operator's screen, and also makes an alarm bell noise if there's radar in the area as well. Other than that, it's very simple. We've had a total rewire, new switch panels, and brand new batteries which are underneath the navigation seat. We have to have an electronic depth sounder that's inside the boat because I don't expect to be needing it, and I don't want electronics in the cockpit if I can avoid it. So I've just brought it all down below. And then you've got a whole raft of safety equipment. Literally, we have 2 yellow brick tracking devices, which are manual texting devices as well. We've got a satellite phone that I've plumbed in up here, and we carry a second satellite phone in the grab bag, which is sealed up with a spare SIM card should we need it. The notice of race is downloadable from the GGR website. So if you want to see how much safety kit we've got on board the boat, it's 3 EPIRBs and a PLB. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, it's massive. In fact, just before the 2018 edition of the race, the FFV, the French Federation Voile, which is the kind of they oversee all the racing events that are run from France. They descended on GGR and did an inspection of the boats and the rules, etc. Wanted to know exactly what precautions were being taken. And at the end of the inspection, they actually announced that it was the most it was the highest level of safety specification they'd seen at any race ever before, even including the Vendée Globe. So it's pretty impressive. You know, it's a huge accolade for Don McIntyre and the GGR, I think. Yeah.
And I guess your safety plan here, this is just so in moments when it all goes wrong, you know where stuff is. You don't really.
Yeah, I mean, I know where it is. I mean, I know the boat like the back of my hand. It's actually there in case someone else comes on board your boat. Okay. So if you know I'm incapacitated for any reason and someone comes to rescue me and they need to know where the medical kit is, etc., where the sat phones are, etc., they can look there and get a quick snapshot of where things are in the boat. Yeah.
And have you got a weather fax on board?
I have weather fax on board, but it's not actually plumbed in yet.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be a huge benefit to me, to be honest with you. I won't go into too many details, but that's my view of it. It'll be interesting to see how the race unfolds.
Okay, and just talk me briefly through your storm tactics. Have you settled on what you're planning to do yet?
Well, I've got it's very wise to take some form of trailing device, let's call it, whether it's a drogue or it's a warp or etc. And there are some variations, some choices there. Basically, if you take all the sails down on a long keel boat, she'll lie beam onto the waves, and that is just a nightmare situation in big breaking seas. And you are going to have a knockdown and a 360 in that instance. So I actually have a very long warp on board the boat, and I can also take the chain off the anchor that has to be on board, and actually trail the chain as well out the back of the boat. So I've got about 175 meters of warp that I can trail, and 15 meters of that is 10 mil short link chain. So it's a very effective rudder, effectively, to help keep the stern to the waves. As much as possible, I'll be keeping the sails up to keep the boat moving. It's not like the Vendée where the boat planes easily. So, you know, it's just a question of reducing the impact of the waves when they do hit you. And so keeping the boat moving as best you can is about all you can do. And I have part of my motivation for having bare stays on the boat rather than just furling gears is I can set a proper storm jib, a Hancon one, not one that wraps around, or a furling sail, etc. And with having a bare stay both behind and in front of the main furling gear, I can hank the storm jib on the staysail, the inner forestay, for going upwind. I can equally hank it on the outer forestay that's on the end of the bowsprit, and that keeps the sail area out in front of the boat as much as possible to pull the bow downwind. Yeah.